Do we even know how to do this anymore? That's been a minute.
No, it's been so long.
Welcome to Let's Pick This Up Next Week. I'm Dee.
And I'm DJ. We're two therapists who like to dive deep into everything from mental health to politics, voting, and whatever else is going on in the world.
We're here to have real conversations about life, the issues that matter, and how it all affects us. Because let's face it, there's always something more to talk about.
Exactly. So grab your coffee, settle in, and join us as we break it all down.
We'll catch you up on the big stuff, the personal stuff, and the things you didn't even know that you needed to think about.
And when we run out of time,
we'll pick this up next week. Hi, DJ.
Hey, Dee.
How's
nice
it going?
To be back. Yeah,
we're back.
We are back. Yeah, I'm glad for that.
I feel like the last 5 podcasts, the intro has been, we're back.
I hope that we've established a rhythm that we can get into. That
For
we
sure.
can maybe do this like once a week.
Yeah, new year, new schedule for trying to record. And, it's just been my ridiculous schedule that's put us off kilter for the first couple weeks of the year.
Yeah, but it's been kind of a bumpy start to the year.
You're not wrong. So today, at least today that we're recording this, is Inauguration Day.
Yes, it is.
And there's literally still news happening. I don't know. As soon as this is over, I'm going to switch out of political and go watch the Buckeyes because it's a national championship.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
No spoilers because people are going to listen to this in the future. But as of right now,
right.
I'll be rooting on my Bucks.
Yeah. Is that on ESPN?
Yeah, but I don't have cable. So I've got to sign up for a FUBU. And I already did a free trial of FUBU last time I needed a free trial of FUBU.
That's what I always do too. Yeah.
I might get a new email address for this. I don't know.
You'd have to.
Anyway, so it's a busy day politically. And I think, we were just chatting about why it's important to talk about it, even if not only just to focus on the what's happening, but the impact of it, both in ourselves as helpers and then as people who help people. And, in my shoes as a supervisor to, people who help people and your shoes as well, right? So, yeah. So,
yeah.
What's on your mind, Dr. Deej?
Well, I think people were apprehensive, right, going into the inauguration day, like wondering what changes are coming, switching from kind of a more liberal presidency to a conservative presidency. And some of the promises that Trump had made in his campaign. And I think that, I know for me, it even has been more shocking and scarier than I imagined. He announced that as far as at the federal government level, that only 2 genders exist, which my first take on that was okay, there's the non-binary erasure. And I identify as a non-binary person. So that, and my passport has a non-binary gender marker, which is an X. And my driver's license, so right now I'm not as worried about because that's at the state level. But when he signed the executive order, it went further to say that there are only 2 genders, and those genders are based on biology at birth. And what is assigned then, which is not based on chromosomes, they're saying, which is based on whether a person is born with eggs or sperm.
Which, to pause real quick, nobody knows that at the time of birth, right? To not even get into, the nitty-gritties of, first off, when we gender children, give them a assigned sex at birth, it's based on a guess of what their genitalia looks like.
Exactly.
And it's not a perfect science because it's not a science to look and say, that's a penis or that's a clitoris and a vagina.
Right, exactly.
Mistakes happen.
That's really what they do base. If we're being true, they're not doing any other examination when they pull the baby out and say, it's a boy or it's a girl. They're only
it's a penis, it's a vagina. Yeah,
exactly.
That's what they should say.
And you and I were talking, right before you went on air, we've went around at conferences, and done training on working with LGBTQ plus clients, and we talk a lot about gender identity and how do we as helpers, support that population. And I think now, it's, even more important that we know how to support that population, especially transgender clients. Not only, what federal protections do we have, but are we going to see a rise in hate crimes? Do people feel safe? Because of the fact that now it's okay at a federal level to say your identity is not valid.
Which is so interesting to me because, like, okay, because when we do these trainings and these talks and kind of things, I get really into like the legal weeds. I'm fascinated by like legal precedents. So, like, this is through an executive order that he's doing this, but
Right.
there are legal precedents. For example, there was a decision, Bullock case. Oh, God, I cannot remember the name of the case, but it basically said that, when we talk about federal protections of discrimination, to say that sex cannot be discriminated against, it was a court's ruling that includes gender identity and sexual orientation when we say the word sex. So the federal level, it's codified that sex cannot be discriminated against, and there's court precedents to define what that is in that larger scope. So essentially, this executive order is going back on what's codified, which, like, the same thing just happened at TikTok, but like, let's not even go there.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's the uncertainty, like, and given like recent court rulings against, like, what the president's power is, and it seems he has more power than even before. Does executive order supersede, and will it stand? I think we know executive orders like do have a lot of power, whether they're go against court orders or not.
But it's so party enforced, because I think that's my bigger, I will loop back to this because that's my bigger issue in politics in general, is it's so based on party lines. So for example, it was an executive order to do student loan forgiveness, and that wasn't done because apparently the president does not have the ability to do that in executive order. And that's been, a million and two court cases and all that kind of stuff from here. But yet, like, I very much think that because of the current makeup of all three branches of government, that we will see that this executive order will carry more weight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing. And they've said that about this presidency, going into it, is that like this type of power, having all the branches, having the majority in both sides of Congress, that, what's to stop him?
Yeah. And the judicial branch is also heavily conservative at this point. They have a majority. So DJ, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Because you obviously have been through changing the gender marker on your license as well as your passport. So what would that look? You mentioned that your ID is obviously a state ID out of a state that's pretty liberal. So more than likely you'll be able to keep that gender marker. But then, for example, what happens to your passport?
That's a really a good question. Oh, and that's the thing that I was talking to one of my friends earlier, because, I recently traveled to Europe, right? Like, last June. And, not all of the countries that I was in have non-binary gender markers on their passport, but no country stopped me from going into there because of the fact that my passport had an X on it. And the fact that the country that I live in, the country that is supposed to be for free people and all the things, now do not recognize my passport and that gender identity, it does leave to question what happens. Am I going to get a letter from the passport agency stating that, like, if I want to travel, then I need to make sure that my passport matches my gender assigned at birth? I've never changed my birth certificate.
Can you? Weird question, because you're born in Ohio,
and that
right?
Is the thing, right? I was born in Ohio, and the thing is that I thought until recently that I couldn't change it in Ohio, but it looks like I can, and I wish I had changed it before. But here's the reason why I didn't: because I spent in my PhD program, interviewing non-binary counselors who are also, like we said, we're the people that we're helping, but also the people that we supervise and the people that we are in touch with. Now, I spent 5 years researching how microaggressions affect non-binary counselors, and the thing is that a lot of counselors find themselves like only working with transgender people because they don't feel accepted anywhere else. They don't feel like their identity is validated by professors, by supervisors, by all this stuff. And now this is an outright aggression towards non-binary people and non-binary counselors. And I did not want to like participate in the erasure of the non-binary identity. I
Yeah.
didn't want to feel like I have to just give in and do these things because I want to believe that like that people see this identity as valid. And we have protections. So, you know, at one hand I was like, and I had talked to my doctor about it, and like, should I just change my identity to male? And I just felt like it didn't feel right to do that. It
Because it's
didn't
as
feel right
inconsistent
because,
as saying
right,
female. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
exactly, right.
It just
So, I mean,
aligns more with what you
presenting,
perceive to be. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. I am definitely in public perceived to be as a male.
Sure.
Nowhere do I go. On the telephone, by the way, though, I'm always perceived as female.
Still?
Every time.
I'm curious what our podcast listeners who have never seen the video are curious what their perception of
Right.
your
Yeah.
voice is.
Right. Yeah. Never. Every single time if someone genders me on a phone call is always with ma'am. And I have to be like, I'm not a ma'am. But yes, I'm always perceived like it's much safer for me when I fly. My ID says both passport and my driver's license has an X on it. When I fly, I have to pick a gender. I have to pick either male or female when I'm booking my plane ticket. There's no other choices. There's no non-binary choice. I either pick male or I pick female. I always pick male because I look this way.
Sure.
And I have never found that to be problematic. But again, like I feel like it doesn't feel right to have to
it's
to
not
pick something.
the case, you know, like that's a simple form issue.
Right. Yeah.
It's weird.
So, and mostly they used it, I think, because they only have two choices on their scan machines. And and they know how they're scanning like your genital area based on what you say, so they know what to expect there or not, so they don't think that you're coming with something that's like a gun or you're hiding something.
Sure. God, now I have more questions than answers for that, but I'm gonna have to watch some YouTube videos after this.
I learned about that recently because I always wondered why every time I go through the scanner, I always had to be searched before I started using mail. And it is because they base it on like what kind of underwear you're wearing. So if you select female on your gender and you go through and you wear like boxer briefs or something, then it flags, and they have to like that's not what we expect for your underwear there. Yeah.
I pretty much 9 times out of 10 have also been searched, but it has nothing to do with my underwear.
Really?
I'm hoping.
Really?
Yeah.
It's always there, like it always flags like this area here.
It's just like your crotch here.
It is. And they're like, do you want to go to the room and all this stuff? And I'm like, no, it's always happened. But since I switched, it has happened one time where I got, but usually they just go through, no problems.
Amazing.
But it's so, I mean, like, I can say personally for today, for everything that's happened, I thought 2016 was bad when the uncertainty of like what's going to happen. But like for this to happen like first day, and for like to see in the inauguration when he announced that, all the people that cheered, and I knew that like he literally did get like the popular vote, like all the things. Like this country is more pro-Trump than it was in 2016.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been run over by a truck. I feel like, you know, like everywhere, hypervigilant, like everywhere that I look, that like I'm not going to be safe unless like, again, like people perceive me as just a short dude and in public, but like in most cases,
that's again erasing your identity.
Exactly.
You know?
Right. And I, you know, I'm really, and as a supervisor, right. Cause this happened like election day. Cause as professionals, you know, we have to be able to work with anybody, right? I believe we have to be able to work with anybody as professional counselors. And we can't bring politics into our jobs and into like thinking about, you know, how assuming that like our patients, even if our patients are, our clients are transgender or, you know, queer or whatever, like we can't assume our clients' political preferences.
Sure.
And we can't bring our political preferences into our therapy sessions. I think it's a little bit different if we know, if they say it first. But like, and we're in whatever that therapeutic relationship is. But I will work with somebody, whatever their political beliefs are.
Yeah.
Right. And I supervise one therapist right now who is in Texas. And I know the political climate is a lot different there. So they're working with very many people who have different beliefs. So like on election day, I faced a dilemma because I had my weekly team meeting, and I knew that there are a lot of therapists who are like wanting to process, their feelings of that in that group, which is not the place.
Yeah.
So like, so how do I be supportive, but also be unbiased and be a supervisor who's showing that like we have to work with anybody based on whatever their beliefs are. And especially in my job, we're getting in the company that I work for, we have a huge spectrum of people that we're working with. So while modeling that, but by also, trying to be like a place of like, I get it, like, please reach out to me. I'm like, please try and reach out to me if you need any support today.
Yeah.
But like, it's a super hard place for us to be in as professionals because again, you and I are pretty clear about like what our political affiliation is, like in our podcast. This isn't the first time that we've, shown this, but like as professionals, I'll work with anybody. I'm not saying I'm not going to not work with somebody because of their political beliefs. So it's like, it's so hard to like at one side be like, wow, like this is the president and this is the person that people voted for and have feelings about that. But also like, I'm going to work with you and help you live your best life.
Which like, isn't that like the burden we carry? Because like sometimes sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want to be non-biased. I don't want to hold space. I don't want to do that. Like, why should I have to? Like, that's how I have to check that when I feel it in myself. And like, I've worked with a lot of people that many people would find difficult to work with at best. I've worked with violent criminals. I've worked with convicted murderers. I work with psychopaths, sex offenders. I mean, like, the spectrum of what a lot of people on face value would struggle with. But this one gets me. And no, please don't take that as I think Trump supporters are worse than like murderers and like sex offenders. That's not the point here. But it just, when I work with people who have experienced those things or done those things, I know in my own truth, like these are people who need help. They are help seeking. They're sitting in front of me because of these things. And so then it's difficult. So my job is to help them understand the empathy, the perspective, the impact of their behavior. And then when I sit with someone who doesn't understand the impact of their behavior, but that's not their presenting problem. They're seeing me because they lost custody of their kids. But yet I'm sitting here thinking, you just told me you voted for the person who wants to bring back the work requirement for Medicaid, and you will no longer be eligible for Medicaid. You will no longer be able to see me for services. Like, that's what you just did. It's hard to sit with.
It is hard. And I tried it to think of like, I understand the spin on so many things. Like I understand like I do understand like what the buy-in is for people who voted for him. Like I've heard the fear on both sides. I've heard, I've heard the stories that like immigrants are coming in from gang immigrants are coming in from, other countries, and they're going into your houses and they're going into your apartment buildings and they're killing you all, and they have their guns and they're going to shoot you all up. And by the way, the other side wants to take your guns away so you can't protect yourself. So what are you going to do now?
Fear
Right? Like I know, right? I know the fear mongering that's happening. And I understand that like, everybody has like their reasons why they feel like I have to vote for this party because if not, this bad thing's going to happen. And I wanted to almost think that like the fear mongering was happening on the other side, right? That like, all of the things that like we hear that are going to happen to queer people and trans people and whatever, like you're going to be fine, you're going to be safe. Like, it's all just fear mongering, but it's not, and the thing that like gets me is like the non-binary identity, right? Is like, was it harmful to anybody else? Nobody's saying that non-binary is the only existing identity and you have to be that. We're saying that, hey, not everyone identifies with being male or female. And there's this whole other gender identity out there. And like acknowledging that doesn't take the validity away from males or females. And I think that like what I read today is that people believe that they are being forced to acknowledge identities that are not aligned with their beliefs based on religion and what God says and that kind of stuff. And I think that's like so problematic because it doesn't have to have anything to do with that. Like, especially gender, which is a social construct.
Yeah.
But even like, we don't even fully understand what sex is. And it definitely is more than biological sex is definitely more than do you have eggs or sperm, right? Like,
Because some
we don't
people
know,
have neither
right?
of those things, but also are very
Right.
valid in their gender. Even people who are like cisgender. I remember at one point in time, someone said something about like, if you can't bear children, then you aren't a woman. And as a person who battled infertility for, a large chunk of my 20s, I was like, wait, so my identity is invalid because of it? And they're like, no, not
Right.
you. And it's like, okay, so it's just transphobic then, not misogynistic.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
just
Right.
clarifying,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I had a gender affirming surgeries, right? But neither of them were started because of gender affirming reasons. And they were started because of medical reasons. And in fact, not started, my whole hysterectomy was because of medical reasons, right?
Your body was trying to tell you for a long time.
Exactly. My
that
body was like,
that was
this is
incongruent.
not these. Yes. So, it's so fascinating too, because then, right. So what happens to like cisgender, heterosexual women? And I know plenty because my family is full of female reproductive problems. So that have to get hysterectomies. So they have no more uterus. They can't bear children. They're
No
not
more
even
eggs.
ovulating a lot of times if they
Yeah.
have their ovaries removed. So what? They're not women? No, again, like you're saying, no, you're fine. You're a
Yeah.
woman.
That's the twist. That's the play on it to try to make it, and
Yeah.
again, it goes back to then trans women are not real women and non-binary people aren't valid. Like, that's the root of it. Like, if you keep asking
Right.
those questions, that's what to get at. And I think what you said struck a light bulb in me just now because like, I have talked to a lot of people and from a sense where I can sit with people who have political differences, for the most part, I can. Even if I'm like,
Right.
I think that this, I don't agree with this in any way, shape, or form, but I can still have a respectful conversation with somebody. And I remember talking to someone and they gave the example of, well, if I go to the library to go and, do something and I see a book with a rainbow on it telling, people about gender identities, that conflicts with my beliefs as a Christian man. And in my mind, I'm like, I truly don't get that. But like, that's why I don't get it, is because as therapists, as counselors, we're trained to be perspective takers. We're trained to be able to sit in the seat of those we serve. And so although I don't have the experience of being trans or non-binary, I can reflect and think about what that's like. I don't have the ability to sit in a space where I don't believe other people's identity exists. I don't believe it's other people to tell me who they, are my guests to say who you are. I want people to tell me who they are. So if you tell me you're whoever, I believe you. I have a really hard time with those people that are just kind of like, and that's why. It's because they lack perspective taking.
Right. Exactly. And feeling that, like, again, like if I have to hear it or see it or read it, then that means that like you're canceling my identity and my right to my beliefs.
But like, it saves lives to have education out there about different identities,
Right. Yeah. And I know a lot of people who are religious who also don't think that like you can't be transgender, or don't think that like transgender people, have rights and deserve to exist. And I think that like again, like I would say, like, here's the thing, is like I know when the transgender erasure and all the stuff was happening in the campaign, it was at the tail end of the campaign. Like those ads came like so close to election time. And then when you ask people like, how important is this issue to you and voting, most people said it wasn't important. I feel like it should have been like important, because like important in the fact of like,
sure,
I think people should be safe. And I think like all that kind of stuff. But like most people weren't thinking about that, when they're going into voting. Most people weren't voting because they needed transgender erasure.
Exactly. But here's the thing. And And to go to the idea of like, this is Trump's second term, he's not worried about a third. And I think if I have to understand the mindset of people who voted for him in 16 and 20 and 24, I'm thinking of these are people who thought like this is a people's man, and I won't even get into how wrong I think that is. But I think it was supposed to be like a people's movement. And I think now it's like, it's very clear now that the voting's all done and the dust has settled that it's a billionaires movement. I very much think that this is no longer, and it's going to be quickly visible that this isn't about the everyman, the every person who voted for someone thinking, yeah, they don't want people coming and taking their jobs. They don't want drugs, and they don't want violence against women. They don't want, these are all beliefs I can value. People want, a good economy. They want jobs. They want safety. They want, I'm right there with you. We just differ on how to get there. But they voted for a person because those were the things that were out there. And now it's like, oh yeah, you've got, a billionaire head of a tech company and all of this stuff leading a brand new division of the government. What?
Right. And I mean, he paused today during his, and I watched the whole speech, right? Because like
You're better than I am.
I wanted to know. And I know a lot of people were, and I get it and I respect it. A lot of people were like, tune in anywhere else or don't tune in or whatever. But like, I wanted to hear it and see it like firsthand. And I was shocked, actually. Like, I just did not expect. I had read someone had posted right before that about his executive order about trans people. And I didn't see it anywhere. Like, I was Google searching. It's funny because later on, like, I'm finding articles from like weeks ago and stuff, but I didn't see it. None of them this morning. And so I'm like, no, that can't be. And then like, just couldn't believe it. Yeah. And I checked in with other people who also hadn't seen it anywhere. But during his speech, though, he also said, I was surprised because before at the transgender stuff, he talked about Los Angeles. And I've seen all of the hate that's gone into Los Angeles over the fires and stuff, right? And I didn't expect him to be like, hey, like, this is horrible. Los Angeles fires is happening. I was kind of surprised. And then he was like, a lot of this is an impact. He's like, this is impacting everyone. A lot of wealthy people. And he's like, some of these people are sitting like right here and they lost their houses for them. And I'm like, all right, dude, like, I think that's a little bit tone deaf, right? But, I mean, it's like you said, like, that's the thing is like, he's just catering to those people. I mean, all the people, the TikTok guy was there. I mean, the whole TikTok, like the pause never had to happen because Biden wasn't touching it. Nobody was touching it. And I'm sure Trump was like, you have to pause it and then I'll save it, but you have to announce it, so like, because he pauses it and it's all over it. Like,
he's a narcissist,
Trump says he's going to save it.
Names.
Right. And then today it's like, thank you, President Trump, for saving TikTok. Like, even though in 2020 he was like, TikTok needs to go
He was
away.
the one who wanted it banned. He's the one who started the legislative action that got us here. But he just, did better on TikTok this time around. He is like
exactly
the narcissistic adult male equivalent of, if I'm not winning, then I'm going to take my ball and go home. Like,
exactly.
And we let this person have the highest position in the United States.
And again, and I think like what you said about I said that all along, like so much psychological abuse. Yeah. And I think for me, that's why it's easier than for some people to like separate the voter from the guy they voted for because of the fact of like, he has used textbook psychological abuse in order to like get people to see it. And I know that people like, supporters are probably, not happy to hear that. But like, I mean, like I said, fear mongering, all of the things. There's reasons, and a very, very, very few percentage of Trump voters, I think, voted because they think that transgender people shouldn't have rights.
I would agree. So what tips would you give to a person, whether a person or a therapist or whomever, who is struggling to sit in the news of the week, the culture of the week,
Yeah, I mean, I think like I just like what I said to the therapist, like, who reached out to me during the election. It's like, we have to make sure we are like, we can be, and there's plenty of supervision groups or Facebook groups, or I know a lot of people are leaving Facebook too, but there's plenty of, a therapist group to support each other. For like, this is the place where we can talk about how hard is this, if you're struggling yourself, and now we have to support our clients who either are feeling how hard this is as well, who are not, because they're like, my man, what? And again, we should be able to be unbiased. In order to like be unbiased, we have to recognize our bias and know where the place is for it. I think we find a place. You and I are here talking about this. We can,
Sure.
it's our podcast. We can be
place.
biased here. But like, I again will not turn away, a Trump supporter to work with them, for therapy, the same way I wouldn't turn away, like you said, a sex offender, or
Sure.
someone with a personality disorder, or all the things that people think are like hard to work with. I mean, I have a place. I'll come work with you. And I always want to believe that like somehow we can find things in common and everybody can have a seat at the table. I always come from that point of view. Like, I am definitely like, there's got to be a way to talk about it. There's got to be a way for this to work out, without riots and violence and what's the word from Hunger Games? Revolution.
The odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah, more than that. But like, what is it? It's not revolution. Is it a revolution? No. When people
oh my God, now you've got me thinking
back
about
and
it.
like, right, come back and like, fight against the.
It's not a revolt.
I don't know.
The rebellion.
Rebellion.
It's the rebellion.
Like, I feel like there has to be a way to like find solutions and common ground and stuff before we have to get to there. And I think it's like being able to have conversations and being able to talk to people who have different beliefs. Even in your personal life, I think that's what makes you a better therapist, better counselor, because if you can't do that, then how can you work with people who have different beliefs? Yeah. That's what I think. Self-care, for sure. Making sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who understand you and help you feel safe.
Yep. And I would say the same. Self-care, find your people. And it's okay to decide right now that you don't want to find those people who have those differing views. And it's okay to just want to sit in, your own company. Don't get lost in groupthink necessarily. But, take that time and reflect and, I don't know. I think how I'm going to continue to encourage the people that I love and care about, or, and that includes supervisees or clients or whomever that are experiencing a direct reflection of this, because, I have the privilege of someone saying that, well, gender is male or female, my identity's still in there.
Right.
But it does invalidate, my gender as well when people are lumped into it who aren't supposed to be there, right?
Right.
They're supposed to have their own lane, right? I might have said that poorly, but nonetheless. So I think just staying strong and taking up space, like don't give up your seat at the table because it's hard and it sucks, but take up space, stay at the table, and, make noise.
And we have to. And I think, one of the things that, we learn really early on as counselors, therapists, whatever you want to call us, I think that, we learn how important advocacy is. And not just advocating for clients, but advocating for ourselves, advocating, for equity, and advocating for all the things that, like, social justice, all the things that we believe in, especially, in the K-Krupp lane of counseling, which I know that you and I both came from, really understanding what social justice means. And if we don't have our seat at the table, who's going to do it? And I know the one thing, like when I was working on my dissertation, that someone asked me is like, DJ, if you don't advocate for people, if you're not or advocating for yourself, then like, who's going to do it? As hard as it is, like, especially I feel now, even more after I got my PhD, right? Like I have to, I feel like I don't have a choice to not do it. I have to use my visibility in places to be able to, have that voice. And like, I'm teaching,
I saw.
Yeah. So I'm an adjunct, like one class right now. But
what class
in my bio, theories of counseling, it's great.
Nice. Love it.
It's so funny because like I haven't found where I can get access to the textbook, but then like
but you're like, doesn't matter.
Right. But then I am reading the questions and stuff and I don't, okay. I know this stuff, right? Like,
Freud?
I don't need to go, I get it. All the stuff. I've got it. I'm sure eventually I'll make sure that I can check their
Sure.
citations and stuff. But anyway, I don't have my pronouns there because everyone has assumed that I am a guy. They refer to me as he. So I will make sure tonight when I go log into my classroom and I'll update my bio. And I'm not gonna lie, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable because everyone has assumed that I am likely a cisgender male. And not only that, see, but people usually assume that I'm a cisgender male, a tall cisgender male.
You can be like a guy on a dating app and just say you're 6'1". Every guy on a dating app who says they're 6'1" is 5'10". Okay.
I'm a foot shorter than that. But I am going to go and I am going to put my pronouns. And even though it does make me a little bit uncomfortable because nobody at that job, they should have, if they looked at my resume, knows that I am a non-binary person.
Question.
So, yeah.
Do they assume male because you are you are perceived that way, or because you're a doctor? Because you're Dr. DJ, and a lot of people do assume because your name doesn't really have a gender associated with it.
I think in our field, though,
this is true.
I mean, it's definitely a female dominated field, right? So I don't know if it's that necessarily, but I think because the way I look. But if they only heard my voice, they would assume different, apparently. But I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put my pronouns they them beside my name because I haven't done that yet. So that's gonna be my first act of advocacy and visibility today.
Love it. That's fantastic. People don't listen to those things. I have a hyphenated last name and nobody calls me by it. They just call me by the last one. And I'm like, that's not it.
Oh, yeah. The last one? Really?
Yeah.
Not the first one?
Mm-mm.
Huh.
They just go straight for the end. And I'm like, that's messed up.
Because I, of my couple of marriages, I had hyphenated names for some while. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we have to do is show up and advocate.
Take up that space. Well, DJ, as always, I appreciate your time, your insight, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about, at least for the next 4 years,
Yeah.
But, well, I hope you take care of yourself, and
thanks, Dee.
We will pick this up whenever we pick this up next.
That's right. Hopefully next week.
Hopefully next week. All right, everybody, have a great week, and we will catch you all soon. See ya.